Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. So for milestones, like 1,000 subscribers, stuff like that, in the past I've done Ask Me Anything videos. And they did okay, but I don't think they were terribly interesting, judging by the few questions that came through and just not a whole lot of interest in those videos. So I've kind of left those behind. However, I recently came up with an interesting idea, something a bit more unique. So tonight, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And whoever wants to can leave some answers in the comments below. Now, that would be a boring video. 3 minutes of me just asking questions. So, I'm going to participate as well. I'm going to answer my own questions, and anyone who wants to participate, again, can leave your answers as well. Alright, so the first question. What is the first watch that you recall owning? And for me, there's a few highlights through my life, way before I was a watch nerd. At one point, I had a Fossil watch. I think as a teenager, it was gold-toned and had a car embossed on the dial. I also spent an entire summer picking berries, and every week I would get paid. And as soon as I got paid, the first thing I did was buy snacks and a cheap gas station watch at the convenience store right near the field. So by the end of the entire summer, I had zero money and a bunch of cheap LCD and quartz watches. However, I think the first watch that I can recall ever owning was one of the transformable watches. I think I had, this was a long time ago, so it's kind of vague, but I'm pretty sure I owned one of the robot ones. Even more than that, I distinctly remember a friend of mine having a watch that transformed into a jet. I remember that one was so much cooler than the one that I had. Although, I do have an eBay search out there for those transforming robot watches. At some point, I might get one. Of course, the strap on them is probably too small for an adult, but it would be kind of cool. Alright, question number 2. What is your biggest regret, either in purchasing a watch or selling a watch? I don't really have any regrets myself as far as letting watches go. I do miss watches that I've sold, but at the time I had a good reason to do so. I probably wouldn't be wearing the ones that I sold. I would just have them and be glad that I had them. Like my Malvern 595. I think it was a 595. I totally forget the numbers now. Had to be. That was a brilliant watch, just gorgeous. And I do miss it every now and then, especially since Christopher Ward has pretty much completely abandoned dress pieces like that. Even at the time that these were available, their other dress pieces were nothing like the Malvern. This was an ultra slim, just elegant, beautiful watch. However, even if I owned it now, I probably wouldn't wear it because I have smaller vintage size pieces that would fill that space. My Seiko Dolce is a perfect stand-in for the Malvern because it's vintage size, it's ultra slim, it is quartz, but it does have a similar aesthetic to the Malvern. I do have a regret in a purchase that I made. And don't get me wrong, this has nothing to do with the brand. I'm not bashing this brand, even though many, many people do. But this watch, number 1, is ridiculous. And number 2, I was on an anniversary cruise trip when I purchased it. And at that time, I really never bought things. I didn't have a Play account, a watch fund account. And so the prospect of my wife being cool enough with letting me buy something ridiculous, I just bought it. And I actually felt bad at the time, and as time has gone on, felt even worse. And that watch is my ginormous Invicta. This thing is absolutely huge. I mean, yeah. It's so huge that it's actually painful to wear the thing. It is just unforgiving. Now, granted, it has been fun to wear this at costume parties and stuff. I've done a 1990s hip-hop party and wore this and some other costumes. So it's served a purpose, but I should have just saved our money and not bought anything. Alright, question number 3. Being honest, do you own a watch that you wear because you know it's an eye catcher? And if so, what watch is it? Alright, this one is interesting because even when I am choosing a watch that I know is a brilliant piece and should be an eye catcher, I'm still not wearing it solely for that reason. I've never worn a watch just to impress other people, but there was one time. So you may have seen the video. I've actually done a couple because I've done 2 different trips, but the first trip that I made with a friend of mine to Seattle, I knew that we were going to be looking at Rolexes and Pateks, and I intentionally wore the vintage Tudor. And I'm so glad that I did too, because we went to Bend Bridge, and this was the trip where Dan and Dan were working, the 2 Dans. They were working in the Rolex section. They noticed the Tudor, and they were absolutely in love with it, because it's brilliant looking. So I'm guilty as charged on that one. And I do sometimes wear the Dolce Vita, especially if I'm going to an event where I'm dressing up even more than normal. Because the Dolce Vita looks so amazing with a suit or with long sleeve button-up shirts. It looks just perfect. Alright, question number 4. What watch-related opinion have you turned a 180 degrees on? And for me, I would say that it's quartz. So when I first became a watch nerd, I had absolutely zero interest in quartz of any kind. It had to be mechanical, automatic or manual wind, or nothing. However, as I explored different watches, I encountered some pieces that were quartz and still brilliant, like my Dolce Vita. It doesn't bother me at all that that watch is quartz because it's so gorgeous and amazing. So instead of being an immediate turn-off, I'm totally cool with quartz. Do I want an entire collection of quartz watches? Absolutely not. But I definitely don't mind having a few here and there. Of course, now that I'm saying all of this, I'm reminded of a few other positions that I've flipped completely around on, such as watch size. When I first started collecting watches, it actually bothered me when people would get on YouTube and whine about large case sizes, even people that I liked. I think because I was mortified that all the watches would become tiny, and at that point in time, I refused to go any smaller than 40 millimeters. Now I am exactly the opposite. I am the jerk on YouTube talking about how watch cases should be smaller. Although I do throw in the caveat that I prefer options. I would like to see watches available in multitudes of sizes, so that those who like the larger cases have an option, but there's also a smaller option for people. Whether you call that a ladies' watch or a unisex watch, either way, whatever. And dates too. When I first started collecting, didn't mind dates at all, and now I do. That was another thing where I used to get irritated about people on YouTube griping about date windows. I have become all of that, which I used to hate. Alright, question number 5. If you were to start a watch brand, what would you call it? However, when I was thinking about it in light of this video, I thought maybe I would go with a watch brand name that was a Lovecraftian reference. Instead of trying to find some ancient word that's associated with time in some way, shape, or form, just go full Lovecraftian. So here's a few different names that I've thought of. Cyclopean watches, Innsmouth timepieces, Dunwich watches, or just go full on cryptic and just call your brand Rilia. Okay, question number 6. A non-watch nerd relative asks you for a watch for their birthday or Christmas, some event like that, as a gift. What do you buy them? This one was kind of tough. So my thinking was it would be a quartz watch, because if you're not a watch nerd, I feel like mechanical watches are a bit intimidating. My son is a good example of that. He has a few watches and actually wears all of them. However, when I offered him a mechanical watch and explained, yeah, you'd have to wind it once a day, he was not interested at all. So for a non-watch nerd, I would go with quartz. I would also try and find a brand that they're familiar with. And my reasoning here was I could take something familiar to them, but show them sort of a next level watch that brand has put out. So maybe it's a gateway watch for them or not. It'll either be a watch that they like, hopefully, or that might be what gets them into watches. Total watch nerd corruption. And I was also looking for affordable pieces, around $100 to $200, because I'm not spending more than that on their present. Alright, so the first watch that I found was a Seiko SUR311. And I like this piece because it's brilliant looking, kind of grand Seiko-ish in a way, and it's just a great everyday wear watch. It doesn't look like a cheap mall watch, it just looks like a nice, everyday, sporty-ish watch. The other watch that I found was actually a surprise to me. I found a crazy looking Fossil, and it's at a great size as well. And that was the Fossil Caraway. Caraway, however that's pronounced. I think the one that I found was actually sub 30 millimeters wide. This is a tank style dress watch. However, when I looked it up again, I found one that was 30 millimeters wide. Tank watches are just brilliant, and that would be a great gateway watch into other pieces. Alright, question number 7. What not so conventional dial color is your favorite? And what color do you not like? Alright, so for this one, I love red dials with silver cases and silver indices, but the dial color that I would really love to get my hands on is a glacial blue dial. And as for colors that I don't really care for, I kind of like all the various colors that are out there, but I would have to say maybe purple. Purple is kind of odd. I mean, I'm even down for a pink dial, like the watermelon. I think it was a Grand Seiko. I'll have to track down my photos of it for my trip to Seattle. But the watermelon watch is super fun because the dial's pink, but the hands are green. So you have the fun, summery watermelon colors in there. Okay, question number 8. What watches do you usually take with you on vacation? And for me, this one was pretty easy. I mean, I take a lot of different watches on vacation, but there are a couple watches that have gone with me on nearly every vacation I've been on ever since I purchased them. The first one is my Armida. That has been with me, I think, on every vacation since I bought that watch. And surprisingly, the second one is my Dolce Vita. Because usually when I'm going on vacation, I'm planning on at least doing one night in a nice restaurant. And I always have that watch for that option. Question number 9. If you could go back in time and buy a no longer produced watch, brand new, what would that be? And my choices, of course, would be the pull router, because while I do own a pull router, the dial on mine looks brand new, so it's definitely not authentic. And being able to purchase an SAS pull router, or just, I'll take any pull router brand new would be super cool. Although I had a couple other runner-ups here, it would be amazing to get like a first gen Reverso brand new, or an A11. That would be absolutely wild. To get an A11 World War II field watch brand new? Yeah. Okay, and question number 10, my final question. And you may actually already have one of these. So if you do, I guess the question is, what is it? If you don't, if there was a watch that you inherited from a parent or grandparent, and maybe even they inherited it, and it's a piece that you plan on enjoying yourself before you hand it off to your children, what would that watch be? And on this one, there are so many different choices. I mean, I could go with the obvious ones like the pull router that was mentioned before, but I wanted to kind of branch out and choose something a little bit different. So I came up with 2 pieces. A vintage Cartier of some kind, so just a brilliant tank style watch that's just timeless in design, or a vintage Smith's watch, just because of the crazy heritage. And yeah, I mean, Mount Everest. But those 2 would be pretty cool, just because of 1, the style, and 2, the story behind it. Alright, so if you want to answer any of these questions, fill up the comments below. I'm super interested to see what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching.